Hello everyone, and welcome to FebuFairy. Today we'll be drawing a fairy based on the flower... You know, I probably should have made an intro. Excuse me a moment. I'm okay! As I was saying, today I'll be drawing a fairy based on the Peony. More specifically, I'll be drawing a Bashful Peony fairy, but I'll get back to that later. You're probably wondering what this whole FebuFairy thing is all about, and the short answer is that it's mermaid, but with fairies, and it's in February. Just the self-imposed drawing challenge where I will draw a different fairy for every day of February, which is rather nice because I get to draw a whole 2 to 3 fewer fairies than I'd have to draw in, say, January or Augafairy? That second one doesn't sound very good. I've added the additional aspect that each fairy drawn will be themed around a certain type of flower and its attributed meaning. If you did not already know, during the Victorian era it became fashionable to attribute meanings to flowers so that you could convey your emotions towards a certain somebody through a bouquet. Peonies, for example, have a variety of meanings, from romance to prosperity to good fortune to a happy marriage or riches, honor, and compassion, but also bashfulness, which is a meaning I decided to go with, not only because it was the first of all those meanings that I saw, but also because I thought it'd be fun to draw a shy little fairy for the first day. That is not to say I drew this fairy on February 1st. I actually drew it back in January because I thought it'd be safer to have a bit of a buffer, just in case something happens during this upcoming month that would cause me to fall behind. Also because I'm planning to have commentary instead of music on all these videos. And making the commentary and making the videos are both quite time-consuming. But also, as much as I like to use royalty-free music, it's hard to find pieces that are long enough for some of these videos. And anyway, who wouldn't want to listen to my thoughts on my art? Such as my current thought, which is I forgot to add the wings until the very last minute. Actually, it was even beyond the very last minute, because Krita crashed right after I finished, so I lost a good 20 to 30 minutes of work. But when I brought it back up, it turned out that it had been sent back to a state right before I started shading, which was a perfect point to actually add the wings like I'd forgotten to. Actually, I've gotten pretty decent at editing the video so that you don't have to see the crashes, which you won't see the crash in this video. I did keep a couple restarts on some of my other speed draws, but mostly just to give them a better representation of my drawing process, which involves a lot of crossed fingers and hoping that Krita won't crash. Not to say that Krita's bad. I mean, it has a lot of features, especially considering that it's open source software, and that it's free. Honestly, I place most of the blame on my laptop because, I mean, it's held together with binder clips. Not top of the line stuff here. But enough about my software and hardware issues. I'm actually pretty happy with how this came out as a whole. Color-wise, it's pretty decent. Pink and green always get along pretty well. When it comes to the face, I do like how the hair emulates flower petals, but I don't really like how the bangs wind up covering her eyebrows, and then her collar covers her mouth. It really messes up conveying a very strong sense of expression. Usually when you design a character, it's good to have like the eyebrows and mouth visible because those are usually important if you want to show like proper expressions on them. And I mean, even when it comes to cartoony characters, that's a good rule of thumb. But again, I'm pretty happy with it. I definitely like how the leggings came out. I think the little lattice pattern along the sides adds a bit of visual interest because the legs were looking kind of bland and there's that thumb. I wind up getting rid of it later, but I like to throw on a bit of nail polish onto the hands that I draw. It helps give a better idea of where the fingernail is and how the finger itself is set and sitting in relation to the hand itself. But I wind up getting rid of it because it really didn't fit and it didn't really make sense with how she was holding her hand. If you haven't noticed, I work in layers, a lot of layers. Those are really helpful though when it comes to basically not affecting the stuff that you've already drawn. That's how I'm able to draw the flower stem without having to worry about coloring over the legs or somehow messing them up, because I'm working on a layer below the legs. It also means that because I never label my layers, please kids, label your layers, also say frequently, don't do what I do. But because I never label my layers, I wind up having to play the very fun game of guess which layer that was in. So that can be nice. Also, I get to play the very fun game of you actually drew in the sketch layer, and now you have to delete everything you've just made. Don't have to do that one very frequently, though. And now on to shading. Well, this isn't really shading. It's kind of more of texturing. Well, at this point, it's basically adding blush. The red that I added to her skin gives a bit more depth, and it keeps it from looking too flat. And now this is also more texturing than shading at this point, because peonies aren't a solid pink on the petals. Of course, I really didn't capture. They tend to have like almost a whitish. They tend to get darker at the edge of the petals and get like very pale near the base of them. I did not convey that at all. I basically just tried to add a bit more texture with this sort of a paintbrush. I really like, it's a paint styled brush and I really like it. It definitely, it blends slightly, but not a lot. And it basically lets it have a more natural looking texture to my work. And I use it for everything. I mean, I'm actually using it right now during the shading. Admittedly a smaller brush than I was last using, but same brush, just different size. The only other brush I really used for this piece was a round sort of charcoal style brush. And yeah, I basically use those two for most of my work. I found them free on DeviantArt or something like that, and I probably could look them up and link them if anybody's interested. Anyway, my one issue with this whole piece and some of the next few pieces that I make is that I don't feel like I really challenged myself in some ways. I wouldn't say that drawing people or human figures is necessarily a strength of mine, but I do know that I do that a lot more than I draw backgrounds, and backgrounds are something that I feel like most artists find themselves sitting around going, I could learn how to draw backgrounds better, but they also spend a lot of time sitting around going, I could also learn how to draw hands better, and I'm not really doing either to much extent in this piece. Ooh, and sparkles! I really like adding sparkles. There are brushes out there that you can use to add them, but honestly, I find that it's easier to just add a bunch of dots and then set some of them to a slight blur. But back on topic, one thing that I'm hoping to do in the future is basically add more backgrounds to the stuff I make. And hopefully I'll do that, but looks like I'm at the end of this video, and I hope everybody liked this. Have a nice day. See you next time.